All right, I'm here. Twitch.tv/110sports, 110sportsmedia.com/live. Thank you so much for joining us on a Monday. It's a big Monday. In case you're living under a rock, last night the Los Angeles Lakers dominating Game 6 of the NBA Finals. LeBron James gets his 4th ring, along with Anthony Davis getting his 1st. It was one of the more complete halves of basketball I've seen in quite a while, and certainly in these playoffs. But we'll get to all of that. Of course, what comes with LeBron winning a title is a LeBron versus MJ discussion. He's got 4 titles now, 2 of them more unique, more memorable than any of Jordan's individual titles in a vacuum. Of course, Jordan has 2 three-peats, so we'll discuss that here in a little while. I also want to talk about the Heat future because they're in an interesting place as a team that just went to the finals, both from a is this team really good enough perspective to how much cap space they're going to have, what their options might be going into next season, specifically after in the summer, quote unquote, summer of 2021. All of the opportunities that they have and what they could do with the cap space that they're going to come into now that the season is over. We'll talk about the free agents, that the Heat players that are now free agents, what they could do with that money, and those kind of things. We'll do that at 11:20 after we talk about LeBron versus MJ a little bit. The Rays won a baseball game in very Rays fashion against the Astros last night to win Game 1 of the ALCS. We'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about the Braves and Dodgers beginning the NLCS later this evening, and then we'll do some FY and get out of here for the day. That's on the agenda. We've got a lot to get to, of course, but where I want to start, which will be no surprise, is Game 6 of the NBA Finals. The Lakers were up by 28 at the end of the first half. It was one of the more spectacular. The Lakers had 36 points in the second quarter. The Heat had 36 points in this first half. It was a combination of just absolutely elite defense with very few mistakes and contributions from all over the place. We'll start on the offensive end. They shot 54% from the field. LeBron 5 of 80 at 11, 9, and 6 in the first half alone. Anthony Davis and KCP combined for 30 points. Anthony Davis only finished with 19, but this game was over at halftime, and so Anthony Davis and the rest of the Lakers just sort of cruised in the second half, but they were all Anthony Davis was all over the place. Even if somebody got beat, the help was there. They were in passing lanes. It really was a absolutely spectacular performance from the Lakers on both ends of the floor. Listen, the margin of error for the Heat was always going to be small, and then you get hurt and it's even smaller, if not non-existent. The turnover battle ended up, being fairly similar, but in the first half, the Heat turned the ball over 10 times. Turned the ball, 9 times for like 16 fast break points for the Lakers in the first half alone. They were outscoring the Heat by 26-10 in points in the paint at one point in the first half. It really was a dominant performance. The Heat couldn't do anything. You weren't getting shots to go down, and part of that was because of the Heat, but the majority of that was just because of how unbelievable the Lakers were on the defensive end. They were forcing turnovers, getting out in transition. The fast break points were unbelievable. And when you're at a disadvantage the way the Heat were, the way they They keep things close as they don't make mistakes. They don't let the Lakers get out in transition. And they make their foul shots, and they didn't do any of those. They were just 13 of 22 from the foul line. Individually, the performances weren't spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. You just sort of got the feeling early that Jimmy exerted so much energy to win Game 5. He only scored 12 points on 5 of 10 shooting. He also had 8 assists and 7 rebounds, so certainly didn't disappear by any stretch of the imagination, and still played 44 minutes, but wasn't nearly good enough. Bam had his best game of the finals, 25, 10, and 5. Unfortunately, it just took a little while for him to get there, coming back from that neck strain. Clearly wasn't super comfortable or completely himself right after coming back. He was great in this game. But Duncan Robinson, after 26 in Game 5, only 3 of 8 from the field for 10 points. Tyler Hero, 3 of 10. Apart from, he's quietly been, and I'm a huge Tyler Hero fan, and he's going to be around for a long time. But after that 37-point performance in the Eastern Conference Finals, he's been a rookie. He's been asked to do a lot for this Heat team, stepping into the starting lineup with Dragic getting hurt. He's been inefficient. His numbers pretty much across the board have gone down from a rebounding and facilitating standpoint as well. It was a tough game for the Heat. And real quick, I want to give a shout out to Goran Dragic, who played 18 minutes and 56 seconds in this game. He certainly didn't look like himself. He looked uncomfortable, and I'm sure he was hurting a plantar fascia tendon. A tear like that doesn't fix itself that fast. I'm sure he was in pain for the entire 18 minutes and 56 seconds. You have to commend him for giving it a go, though. He was +2 and plus or minus in his 19 minutes, but he clearly was struggling a little bit and certainly wasn't nearly as effective as a healthy Goran Dragic would be. The Heat, the Lakers dominated this half and closed out this series the way that I would expect a LeBron James team to close out a series, and especially close out a series against a team that is shorthanded at this point, not completely healthy, and the underdog. Because one thing LeBron James does better than anybody else on the planet is beat teams he's not supposed to lose to. There's really only one instance in NBA history, in his career, in which he got hit in the mouth and lost to a team that he wasn't supposed to lose to, and that was in 2011, the first year of the Heat, the first finals of the 4 that he went to in Miami, in which he had just 46 points over the last 3 games of that series, including an 8-point performance in Game 4 that was easily the worst playoff game of his career. He got beat, and that was, while that might be a blemish on his resume that some people may never be able to get over, and we'll talk about LeBron versus MJ here in a few minutes, but that was absolutely a turning point for his career, and one of the reasons why he's the most mentally tough basketball player on the planet. He's so smart. I mean, we talked about it in Game 1. It took the Celtics a week and a half to figure out the Heat zone. It took LeBron about 35 minutes to figure out the Heat zone. LeBron doesn't lose to guys he's not supposed to lose to, and he wasn't supposed to lose to this Heat team. And you saw that in game 5. I mean, of all the reasons that the Heat lost Game 5, one of those reasons was certainly not LeBron James's performance. I mean, in Game 5, he had 40 points on 15 of 21 shooting. It was 6 of 9 from deep, 13 rebounds, 7 assists. In this game, he had 28, 14, and 10 for his 11th finals triple-double. He's now up to 27 or 28 triple-doubles in his playoff career. That's second to only Magic Johnson, who has 30. LeBron, the days of LeBron not showing up in big moments are over. When it's not good enough, it's when his teams just aren't good enough. I'm talking 2018 Cavaliers when he drops 52 in Oracle, and then J.R. Smith forgets to look at the most basic elements of basketball, like the score and how much time is left. And they ended up losing that series. I mean, that series was over after they lost that game. But in this game, the entire Lakers team looked like a team led by LeBron. From the very jump, you saw the intensity they had on the defensive end. You saw their intentions of ending this series right now. From the jump, it was incredible. I mean, Alex Caruso was getting offensive rebounds, tip-ins over Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. There were a couple of times where he just kept the play alive, and Bam stumbled out of bounds on one of them and got the Lakers another possession. KCP, 17 points. He had 15 in the first half. Rondo became the fourth player in NBA Finals history to start 6 of 6 from the field in a Finals game. He had 19 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. He really, truly turned back the clock. He went 3 of 4 from the three-point line, which isn't exactly turning back the clock, but getting to the rim, changes in pace, facilitating for his teammates, scoring the basketball. These are all things that we saw Rondo do, specifically as a Celtic, in the late 2000s and the early 2010s. He really turned back the clock in a big way. And this game was a perfect example of what the Lakers were in this playoffs, and that was a playoff team. That was a team led by LeBron James and Anthony Davis that got consistent contributions from their role players, which was the biggest question coming into the playoffs for this Lakers team. Could their role players contribute enough to win a title? The answer was a resounding yes. They played 21 playoff games they played 21 playoff games this year. In 20 of them, multiple role players had more than 10 points or more. So players not named Anthony Davis or LeBron James, because of course LeBron and AD had to be great, and they were for all but 3 or 4 games in these playoffs. But they got consistent contributions. The only time that they didn't get it was in Game 5, when KCP was the only player not named LeBron or AD to score more than 9 points. And that's what happens. LeBron and AD in that game combined for 68 points, but they weren't able to get it done. The guys coming in off the bench, your Alex Caruso's, your Markieff Morris's, your Rajon Rondo's, your KCP's, your Danny Green's, your Kyle Kuzma's, whoever it might be, they were able to step up and piece together this by-committee role player group that made this Lakers team very dangerous, because AD and LeBron were good in pretty much every game. At least one of them was in pretty much every game. And in most games, almost all of them, both of them were very, very good. Davis, 19 and 15, 3 assists. He had a really nice first half. In the first half alone, he had 15 and 5 on 6 of 11 shooting. In the second half, it just didn't matter. LeBron had a better second half. 8 of 12, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He was the heart and soul of this team from the get-go in this game, like he usually is. But they were just bullying people early. They were getting out in transition. LeBron is still one of, if not the most terrifying basketball player in transition in the NBA right now. It was a masterpiece what the Lakers were able to put together in this game. In some ways, I wish it was a little bit more competitive. In other ways, it certainly is fitting that this team wins the NBA title, going all the way back to almost a year ago now at this point. almost exactly. I'm not sure when the first NBA game of the 2019-20 season was, but I think it was somewhere around October 15th. For a year now, the Lakers have been atop. The Lakers have been atop the Western Conference, right up there atop basketball with the Milwaukee Bucks. It was fitting that a team like the Lakers, October 22nd was the first game of the NBA season. October 22nd, 2019 was the first game of the NBA season. So almost a year exactly since game one. They've been one of the best teams in the sport since that point. Real quick before we take a break, and we'll come back talk about LeBron and the Heat, talk about LeBron, MJ, and then the Heat future a little bit. It can't be understated how impressive it is what the NBA did over the last 93 days. 93 days ago, July 10th, I guess 94 days ago now, was July 10th. That was when teams began arriving at the NBA bubble. Since then, nobody entered the bubble with COVID and nobody tested positive for COVID-19 in those 93 days. The puzzle in front of the NBA, its players and coaches, was virtually impossible. And they found a way to get it done with flying colors. I mean, everybody, including myself, including Josh and I on this podcast right here, the Jays for Days podcast, we thought it was a matter of minimizing and a matter of hopefully not letting COVID break out in a way that ruins a team's season or ruins a playoff series or whatever it might be. And not only did they minimize it, they eliminated it. With this airtight bubble at Walt Disney World that is truly an incredibly impressive feat. And this goes to all of the sports that have gone into a bubble, whether it be the WNBA who played a full season in the bubble, whether that be the NHL who were able to round out their season with a playoffs that went flawlessly. The NBA played 172 games in the bubble, 22 teams, along with 22 groups of 35. And they walked away with no blemishes on their COVID-19 record, which is really, really spectacular and an incredible thing to have achieved. So a huge congratulations to Adam Silver and his team, as well as the Lakers, for just being able to finish this season and do it so perfectly and without any hiccups, and letting families of these teams, when there were 8 teams left, get to the bubble and get to be with their families and have no positive cases in that scenario either. To make it happen the way that they did is truly incredible. And outside of sports, it's a testament to how we beat this thing. Test, and test some more. Follow guidelines, wear a mask, but test. The more we test, the easier this becomes. And sports are a testament to that. Now we can have a conversation about whether or not these tests should be used for, that the NBA should be spending money on tests for their players rather than tests to facilitate around the country. We can have that conversation if you want to. I'm not trying to have it right now. Because regardless of how you feel about this was a overwhelming success for the NBA and a testament to the trust and the communication and collaboration that the NBA and its players have. I mean, not only did they put this bubble together, but they put this bubble together in a way that made sure that the NBA continued to be a vessel of social justice and social equality and social change while being in the bubble. All of those things don't happen if you don't have an incredible relationship and respect between the front office of the NBA and its players. because to make this kind of thing happen, there has to be a level of respect and trust to work together in a way that is required for this to happen as flawlessly as it did. So shouts to the NBA for making this happen without any sort of hiccup. Shouts to the Lakers in a season in which we saw the tragic death of Kobe Bryant, in which there was a lot of hardships to go through, from a hiatus to, of course, the obvious hardships of a global pandemic. So congratulations to the Lakers. What they've done is certainly, there are ways in which this is a weird championship, and it will always have an asterisk next to it. But what this championship isn't is less than that of a championship in a normal situation. So shouts to the NBA, shouts to the Lakers on getting the job done on multiple fronts and ending the NBA season last night with the Lakers, the last team standing. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about MJ versus LeBron, how I think the conversation changes a little bit with LeBron securing his 4th title. And I want to talk about the future of the Heat, because I think it's a little bit interesting, and they're in a little bit different of a situation than a team that just went to the finals normally is in, I think. But we'll talk about that coming up next. You're watching the JMULL Show on 110sportsmedia.com. Welcome back to the JMULL Show on a Monday. Twitch.tv/110sports, 110sportsmedia.com/live. Welcome back to the show. My name is Josh. This is the JMULL Show. Listen, every time that LeBron does something impressive, the GOAT conversation comes back up. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because there's part of me that thinks that it's a little unfortunate that we have to have this conversation every time, or that the almost the sixth sense in terms of the reaction that we have, the reflex to LeBron achieving something else is to, okay, let's put him and Jordan side by side again. To be clear, before we begin, I find MJ is still the GOAT. There's still more on his resume that to consider him the GOAT than LeBron. But here's the thing about LeBron. First of all, between the two of them, they have 10 championships. LeBron has memorable championships 1 and 2. He led his team through the pandemic, through a 4-month hiatus, and came back to a bubble and won a championship. That's always going to be incredibly memorable. Then he came back from 3-1 down against the best regular season basketball team of all time in the Warriors in the 2015-2016 season, a team that went 72-9. And was up 3-1 against LeBron and the Cavs. The Cavs come back, win that series. There's the block, the Kyrie shot. It's one of the more memorable finals of all time. Excuse me, my bad. That matters, first of all. Second of all, we're going to get to the point where LeBron is going to be the all-time leading scorer in the NBA, barring an injury that happens a lot sooner than we think it is against, a man who seems to be indestructible in a lot of ways. Last night he talked about saying he still has a ton left in the tank, that he plans to continue to play for the foreseeable future. We're going to get to the point where, statistically speaking, LeBron is better than MJ in pretty much every way. He's going to be top 5 in assists. He's probably going to be the all-time leading scorer in the NBA history. He's going to be, just from an all-time stats perspective, he's going to beat Jordan in a lot of ways. What I also think matters here is LeBron's longevity and success that, frankly, that's peak doesn't reach Jordan's peak, but longevity makes it an equally impressive feat. LeBron has literally not lost in the Eastern Conference playoffs this decade. He hasn't lost in a series not called the NBA Finals since before he got to the Heat. Jordan, even in the middle of that series, of the runs. Now, I know he came back late in that season and didn't have a lot of time to prepare for the finals after, prepare for the playoffs after his retirement to go play baseball. MJ lost in the Eastern Conference Finals, in the Eastern Conference playoffs. LeBron doesn't do that. The number of finals that LeBron has been to is absolutely ludicrous. And apart from what happened in 2011 against the Mavericks, LeBron has overachieved in the finals based on odds. He's overachieved. Apart from the Mavericks loss, every time he's lost, he was supposed to lose. He should have never beat the Warriors. He beat the Warriors once. that Heat team in 2014 was elite. One of the best in terms of in terms of plus minus per 100 possessions in the playoffs. The Spurs are one of the best playoff teams of all time, that 2014 team. And then LeBron's done it with 3 different teams and 3 different head coaches. Now, to say that MJ wouldn't have been capable of that would be silly, because A, we don't know, and B, we didn't get to see it. A, we didn't get to see it. B, there's no reason to suggest he wouldn't have been capable of that. But it's not on his resume, and it's on LeBron's. Spoelstra and the Heat, Lou and the Cavs, Vogel and the Lakers. It's a really impressive part of this that can't be overlooked. So here's the thing. In terms of and there can be a difference between best and greatest. I think if you asked me who's the best basketball player I've ever seen, and while it wasn't live from what I've seen, old games I've watched, Michael Jordan is the best basketball player of all time. But when LeBron finally hangs it up, he might be the greatest, based on his longevity and the fact that the biggest thing in Michael Jordan's corner is the perfection and the 6. If LeBron gets to, LeBron's at 4, and every one after this he continues to win, we get closer and closer. We get closer. If LeBron continues to challenge just how many titles he has, then the conversation gets very, very interesting. But that's all I wanted to talk about there. It changes the conversation a little bit, or a lot of it, depending on how you look at it. As for the Heat future, listen, here's what we're looking at in terms of the Heat offseason. So on the list of players that are unrestricted free agents now, Goran Dragic, $19.2 million a year. Solomon Hill, $13.2 million a year. Myers Leonard, $11 million. Jay Crowder, $7 million. You got a couple of minimum salary guys. But there's going to be a lot of money to play with here. Now, I do think that there's a chance that the Heat look very, very similar to this season, just with a bunch of one-year contracts, because what you're going to want to do here is be in a position to get Giannis in the summer of 2021. But there's no reason right now to suggest that Milwaukee is going to throw in the towel on Giannis in terms of hoping to get him back. That wouldn't make any sense to me. Because right now, Giannis is certainly still very much, at least seemingly, very much in the running to stay in Milwaukee. And I don't think that's going to change. Milwaukee's going to be good again next season. I don't think there's any reason to suggest that won't be the case. So from an on the basketball floor perspective, there's not a whole lot of reason to suggest that something might go horribly wrong in Milwaukee. The point being is that the Bucks probably aren't going to be trying to deal Giannis at the trade deadline. So what the Heat could do here is re-sign all of these guys, specifically Goran Dragic, for 1 year, and then go from there. And then at the end of the 2020-2021 season, then you're still in a spot to go after Giannis with a ton of cap space. I mean, you still got Hero making no money. Bam, you'll have to pay Bam after the 2020-2021 season. But that's really the only one. Jimmy Butler's under contract until after the 2022-2023 season. Kelly Olynyk, is a free, has a player option and for the 2020-2021 season, but he's making $12 million. So even if he exercises that option, he'll be a free agent after the 2020-2021 season. In theory, you'll have to pay Duncan Robinson after next season. But the most important part here is to set yourself up for a free agent and capitalize on this momentum by making your team better at some point. Because the weird thing about this team is that I don't think this team is good enough to get back to the NBA Finals. This is still a 5 seed that was the perfect team for the bubble and played really, really well. Now, this team is much better than a 5 seed, at least a traditional one. But instead of the mindset being this is a really good team, let's run it back, I think the mindset needs to be, let's use this momentum and the fact that we're Miami, we're a free agent destination, let's use that to make this team even better. Because next year you're going to have, the East is going to, you're Jason Tatum that's a year older with the Jaylen Brown that's a year older, the Nets with KD and Kyrie. There are a lot of good teams. The Pacers will be very good next year, assuming that they can stay healthy. The Raptors, certainly a good basketball team still. There will be a lot of good basketball. Philly with Doc Rivers, can't forget about them. It's not going to be any easier to get to the finals, and I'm not sure that this Heat team, if they're playing in home buildings, I'm not sure this Heat team makes it to the finals again with this current roster. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think the smarter move here is to capitalize on the momentum you have to go and make this team better quickly. And whether that means running this team back and hopefully, having another really solid performance, then you go get Giannis and your Jimmy Butler, Giannis, Bam trio. That looks pretty good too. And it might be a year away. And if Giannis is the guy that ends up coming, it is a year away. But we'll see. But this is a team that needs to capitalize and get better quickly rather than just running it back like a lot of title teams do, or runner-up title teams do. We'll see what they actually decide to do. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the Rays, the ALCS a little bit. They won in very Rays fashion. Then we'll chat about the Braves Dodgers, which gets underway tonight after that. But you're watching the JMULL Show on 110sportsmedia.com. Welcome back to the JMULL Show on a Monday, twitch.tv/110sports, 110sportsmedia.com/live. Thank you so much for joining us on a Monday. Every time the Astros take the field, excuse me, not the Astros, the Rays, every time they take the field, they look more and more like this might be their year. Their pitching is so good. Blake Snell, again, going out. Apart from a Jose Altuve solo shot in the first inning, that's all the Astros got. But they had 9 hits. In the top of the 8th, they had the bases loaded with 1 out. And the Rays got a double play. They have great pitching, and they're so timely. Just the best way to describe it is that every time they need somebody to make a play, somebody makes a play. Whether it's Mike Brousseau, who's hit 11 total home runs in his Major League Baseball career, hitting one over the fence off of one of the most overpowering closers in the game in Aroldis Chapman. Or it's getting a timely double play with the bases loaded when you're up 2-1 in Game 1 of the ALCS. Or just holding the Astros to 1 run and 8 straight innings without a run. When they have a lineup of Springer, Altuve, Brantley, Bregman, Correa that has been hitting the cover off the baseball. You keep getting really, really impressive performances from the Rays, and every time they take a field, it's like, man, is this the year for this team? And they're just at the beginning with the number of prospects they have coming up, and they're not anywhere close to the final form of this era of the Rays. You get Mike Zunino with an RBI, Randy Arozarena, who has been absolutely incredible in these playoffs. Another home run for him. Just really, and it's such an impressive performance every time they get on the field, and they're doing it the way that they have. They're not overpowering people. They hit a lot of home runs in the ALDS. They out home run the Yankees, which is really impressive. But they just find ways to get it done. They get the pitching when they need it. Blake Snell was really good again in this series. In this, 5 innings, 6 hits, 1 earned run. And then John Curtis, Ryan Thompson, Aaron Loop, and Diego Castillo putting it together out of the bullpen. Those guys gave up 3 total hits in the 4 innings that they threw. They're so impressive, and you keep thinking, okay, they go and they didn't shut out the Yankees, but they did a pretty good job. The Astros are hitting the cover off the baseball. Oh man, and they just silenced them in Game 1. Silenced them. Really impressive what this baseball team is doing, and what they continue to do regardless of who they're actually playing. On the NL side of things, we got the Dodgers and the Braves. This is a really exciting series. You got Max Fried versus Walker Buehler in Game 1 tonight. That starts at 8:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What this is going to come down to is now the Braves pitching has been phenomenal. Their bullpen has been awesome. They have played the Reds and the Marlins, which is not elite talent on either of those teams by any stretch of the imagination. Specifically the Reds, one of the worst baseball teams in terms of team average in the majors this season. But their pitching has been so good, led by Max Fried. Ian Anderson, the rookie, been the best pitcher in the playoffs thus far. You feel good if you're a Braves fan about those two guys going toe-to-toe with Clayton Kershaw and Walker Buehler or whoever, whether Dustin May. They've got the pitching at least at the front end of that rotation to make it happen. Where this gets interesting, I think where this series is won is in the middle and games, 4 and 5. 3, 4, and 5. Where you don't have your aces, because these two teams in pretty much every metric are the two best offenses in baseball. Whoever gets the better pitching, whoever pieces together the better pitching right in the center when you can't throw your Walker Buehlers, your Max Frieds, your Clayton Kershaws, your Ian Andersons, when you can't throw those guys out there when they're on rest days, who puts together the better pitching performance? That might end up being who wins this series. I think it's going to go pretty deep. I think these offenses are that good. The Braves offense is good enough to compete with the Dodgers, and they have Cy Young level pitching at the top of that rotation, as do the Dodgers. These two teams are very they match up well, and it could be exciting. You're probably going to have games that the final score is 11-10, 9-8, and the Braves can win those games as well as winning games that are pitching duels, especially if you've got some of these top end starters on the mound, because their bullpen is that good. Now, with that being said, I think the Dodgers will win this series. I think this is their World Series to lose, so I'm going to stick with the Dodgers until they give me a reason not to. They were just too much for the Padres, a Padres team that didn't have great pitching because of injuries more than anything else. It's going to be really interesting how the Dodgers respond to really elite pitching, because they haven't really seen it yet in these playoffs. You got to play a Milwaukee team that was bad, and the Padres team that was just trying to piece enough pitchers together. I mean, for crying out loud, Ryan Weathers, who hadn't pitched higher than A-ball, makes his debut in the NLDS. The fifth player all time to make their debut in the postseason. It was. This will be the biggest challenge for the Dodgers on both sides of the baseball, I think, and for their pitchers and for their hitters that they've seen thus far. I do think that the Dodgers are of course, they've been the best team in baseball all year. I think they'll continue to be that, at least to the extent that gets them to the World Series. It's crazy after a 60-game sprint and a lot of weird things, the way the playoffs turned out. You got an Astros team that is a veteran team that's been to the playoffs, the ALCS for the fourth year in a row. This is they've got the playoff experience, and they're able to piece together good pitching despite having a banged up pitching staff without Justin Verlander. But they got the bats, man, and the bats that have been there and stepped up in really big spots. So you've got that Astros team, and then you've got the three other best teams in baseball. You got the Dodgers and the Rays, who are atop the AL and the NL. The Braves, who are the 2 seed. At the end of all of this, you've got 4 teams. Save maybe the Yankees would be the least surprising team to be there with the Rays. But after all of this, you've got 4 teams that now. The Astros got in because 29-31 is not the record of a playoff team, but they got in. And in terms of teams that have the experience and the talent to get there, the Astros are certainly on that list. But then you've got the Rays, the Braves, and the Dodgers, who have just been really, really good baseball teams all season. And that's, at the end of the day, in these COVID-19 situations, if you've got the best teams for the most part at the end of your playoffs, then that's about as much as you can ask for, because what you don't want is a team that's just clearly not that good winning because of external circumstances. Coming up next, we'll do some FY, get out of here for the day. You're watching the JMULL Show, 110sportsmedia.com. Welcome back to the JMULL Show on a Monday. Twitch.tv/110sports, 110sportsmedia.com/live. Thank you so much for joining us on a Monday. Go Lakers! Absolutely, brother. Yeah, what they did in Game 6 was absolutely spectacular. It was one of the more complete halves of basketball I've seen in a long time, and that's how I expect a LeBron-led team to close out an NBA Finals, especially against a team that in the Heat that was just banged up and clearly the lesser of the two teams. Not a shot at the Heat at all, but I was really impressed by the way the Lakers came out and just absolutely dominated that first half. Let's do some for FYI and get out of here. In case you missed it, Dak Prescott underwent ankle surgery last night. I believe he fractured and dislocated his ankle. I believe that was the final diagnosis of what actually happened to him in a pretty brutal injury. You know, what I want to say about this is you know, Dak's gotten some heat for trying to get the most out of his contract with the Cowboys, wanting more money than people probably thought that he was worth, and I'm not here to say whether or not Dak is worth the 25 million, 30 million, whatever he wanted. What I am here to say, though, is this is why NFL players fight so hard for their contracts, is because this kind of thing can happen. Now, it's at the end of the day a dislocation and a fractured ankle, which is wild gruesome. And remember the Gordon Hayward incident, which I believe is a very similar injury, a broken ankle and a dislocated ankle, which makes it look so brutal. But this is why NFL players fight so hard for these contracts, is because in a sport like football, this can happen so quickly. And thankfully, it's not, a gruesome knee injury that destroys his knee forever. And he seemed to be in pretty good spirits. His brother posting that picture of him and Dak at the hospital, and they seem to be in pretty good spirits. And it's just so hard for them considering what they've gone through in the last year, and that really puts some things into perspective. But when players fight so hard for their contract, this is why, because this can happen in sports in general, but especially in football. So hopefully he comes back just as strong for the Cowboys at some point. But either way, prayers to Dak Prescott and as he recovers from a really quite gruesome leg injury. The Patriots-Broncos postponed after positive COVID-19 cases. Both the Patriots and Titans practice facilities were also shut down on Sunday due to confirmed cases of COVID-19. There was a lot of moving around yesterday with the NFL schedule. We'll try to, hopefully this doesn't end up upending everything. It's hard to piece all of the puzzles together when the NFL doesn't have a whole lot of wiggle room. But here's the NFL announced schedule changes. Broncos Patriots is now week 6, Sunday, October 18th at 1 p.m. Chiefs Bills is now being moved from Thursday, October 15th to Monday, October 19th. Jets Dolphins goes from week 10 to week 6. Jets Chargers goes from week 6 to week 11. Jags Chargers moves from week 8 to week 7. Chargers Broncos from week 11 to week 8. Chargers Dolphins from week 7 to week 10. And Dolphins Broncos from week 6 to week 11. So a lot of things changing with the NFL schedule. Hopefully they're able to keep putting the pieces together, but really the biggest hope here is that NFL players and their coaches and teams do a better job following the rules, because things like what happened in the Titans organization, they don't happen if you're following the rules. That's the whole point of the rules and the protocol. So if a player does contract COVID-19, it doesn't result in a outbreak in the organization. That's the biggest part of this, is that there needs to be a commitment to the rules from everybody involved to keep this thing afloat. And then, of course, Touchline Talk with Josh Doring, Around the Base with Chris Brown. Both of those tomorrow. Josh will be live 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Chris at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you got a chance, please check out those shows. Both of those guys do a really great job covering soccer in Josh's case, and then baseball with Chris and Around the Bases. Check those out. There's a lot to talk about on both fronts, I believe, at this point, of course, in the baseball world, with the championship series currently underway. But thank you so much for listening to this edition of the JMULL Show. I really appreciate you guys being part of the show today. And I'll be back on Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. I'll talk to you then. Until then, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you on Wednesday.